In 14 cycles as a senior medical coordinator, I had removed parasites from brains and treated patients existing in 4 dimensions. None of that prepared me for the day we almost performed last rites over a human's hiccups. My name is Deathworld, and I have been working at Zenith Station Hospital for approximately 14 cycles. I have seen approximately 3,417 patients during my tenure as senior medical coordinator. I have witnessed crystalline bloom syndrome in a Vexian ambassador, treated a Quellan who accidentally phased through 17 decks before we could stabilize their molecular structure, and once removed a quantum parasite from a trader's cerebral cortex while it was actively existing in 4 dimensions simultaneously. Nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the day we admitted Jack Brennan. The emergency shuttle arrived at Bay 7 with minimal fanfare. Standard protocol. The distress beacon had been broadcasting for approximately 6 hours before our retrieval team located the damaged craft drifting near the Andromeda trade route. Single occupant. Life signs detected. Stasis pod activated. Everything seemed routine, which should have been my first warning that the universe was about to laugh directly in my face. I was reviewing inventory reports in my office when Nurse Quillara's voice crackled through my communicator, and I distinctly remember thinking her tone carried an unusual tremor. Deathworld. We need you in Medical Bay 3, immediately. What is the nature of the emergency? I asked, already moving toward the door. The stasis pod patient is waking up. That is the intended function of deactivating stasis pods, Quillara. Yes, but his readings are completely impossible. The monitors keep resetting. We thought it was equipment malfunction, but all 3 backup systems show the same results. I quickened my pace through the corridors, my secondary legs clicking against the polished floor. Medical Bay 3 was our intensive care unit, reserved for critical cases requiring constant observation. When the doors slid open, I was greeted by a scene that resembled controlled chaos more than professional medical practice. 4 nurses were clustered around a single monitoring station, their appendages gesturing frantically at the displays. Dr. Venmouth stood near the stasis pod, his usually calm demeanor replaced by something resembling existential confusion. The pod itself was open, and inside, sitting upright with remarkable casualness, was the human. "Oh, hey there," the human said, his voice raspy but surprisingly cheerful. "Where exactly am I? And, why does everyone look like they have seen a ghost? Do you guys have ghosts? That would be wild." I approached slowly, activating my medical scanner as I moved. The device immediately began displaying readings that made absolutely no sense whatsoever. Internal pressure that should have caused immediate organ rupture. Bone density that seemed engineered for a planet with triple our gravity, a cardiovascular system that was simultaneously inefficient and somehow over-engineered, chemical compositions in the bloodstream that should have been lethal toxins. "Sir, please remain calm," I said, using my most soothing professional tone. "You have been involved in a shuttle accident. You are currently at Zenith Station Hospital. I am Deathworld, Senior Medical Coordinator. Can you tell me your name?" "Jack Brennan," he replied, swinging his legs over the side of the pod. "And honestly, I feel pretty good considering I just crashed a shuttle. Little hungry though. You guys got food here? Maybe something with protein?" "Please do not move suddenly," Quillara interjected, her voice pitched higher than normal. "Your internal readings are highly unstable." Jack laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was loud and completely inappropriate for someone who, according to our instruments, should have been experiencing catastrophic systemic failure. "Unstable? Nah. I am fine. Just got that post-stasis grogginess, you know?" He stretched his arms above his head, and I heard several joints produce audible popping sounds. 3 nurses gasped simultaneously. 1 stepped backward into a medical cart. "What was that noise?" Dr. Venmouth demanded, his scales shifting to a pale yellow that indicated severe distress. "What noise? Oh, you mean my back cracking? Yeah, feels good to stretch after being frozen. How long was I out?" The human Jack Brennan stood up fully. He was tall, approximately 2.1 meters, with a build that suggested significant muscle mass beneath his torn clothing. His skin was a light brown color, his hair dark and disheveled, and his eyes were a striking blue that seemed to scan the room with unsettling awareness. "You were in stasis for approximately 9 hours," I managed to say, though my translator seemed to be struggling with the appropriate emotional tone. "Jack Brennan, I must insist that you return to the medical pod. Your biological readings indicate severe trauma." "Trauma? I mean, yeah, the crash was rough, but I have had worse. One time I fell off a cliff during a hiking trip back on Earth, broke 3 ribs and walked 5 miles to get help. This is nothing. The monitoring equipment behind him emitted a sharp alarm. His heart rate had just spiked to 140 beats per standard minute, then immediately dropped back to 60. On any other species, this would indicate imminent cardiac arrest. Jack Brennan simply looked at the machine with mild curiosity. "Is that thing broken?" he asked, pointing at the monitor. "Because I feel completely normal." Normal. That word would haunt me for the next several hours. Dr. Venmeth caught my eye, and I recognized the expression instantly. It was the same look we had shared 14 cycles ago, when we first encountered a patient with a condition we could not identify, could not treat, and could not explain. Except this time the patient was awake, walking around and claiming to feel completely normal while every instrument in our facility screamed that he should be dead. "Jack Brennan," I said carefully, "I believe we need to run some diagnostic tests. Standard procedure for all patients recovering from stasis. Would you be willing to cooperate?" "Sure, Doc. Whatever you need. But seriously, can I get something to eat? I am absolutely starving." I exchanged glances with Clara, who looked as though she might faint at any moment. Human biology, I was about to learn, did not follow any rules I had ever studied, and that was just the beginning. Getting Jack Brennan to cooperate with our examination protocols proved easier than anticipated, which in retrospect should have been another warning sign. Most species require sedation, calming pheromones, or extensive negotiation before submitting to comprehensive medical analysis. Jack simply shrugged, said sure thing, and hopped onto the examination platform like we had asked him to sit in a comfortable chair. "So, what are we doing here?" he asked, leaning back on his elbows in a posture that Clara informed me was far too relaxed for someone with his supposed injuries. "Full body scan? Blood work? I have to warn you, my blood type is O negative, which is apparently universal donor back home. But I have got no idea if that means anything to you folks." Dr. Venmeth activated the bioscanner and immediately the holographic display began rendering Jack's internal structure. What we saw made Clara drop her datapad. It clattered against the floor with a sound that seemed unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. "By the 7 moons of Queller," Venmeth whispered, his voice barely functioning. "This cannot be real." Jack's skeletal structure appeared on the display and it was horrifying. Not because it was damaged, but because it should not have been able to support a living organism. The bones were dense, incredibly dense, far beyond anything we had encountered in bipedal species. His spine curved in a way that suggested evolutionary adaptation to extreme gravitational forces. His skull was thick, almost armored, protecting a brain that seemed disproportionately large for his body mass. "Is something wrong?" Jack asked, craning his neck to look at the hologram. "Oh cool. That is what I look like on the inside? Neat. Your bone density is approximately 4.7 times greater than standard humanoid average," I said, my translator struggling to keep my voice steady. "The gravitational force required to produce this adaptation would be lethal to most known species." "Oh yeah, Earth has pretty high gravity, I guess. 1G, right? Is that a lot?" 1G. He said it so casually, as though he were discussing weather patterns. I quickly accessed the station's database, cross-referencing gravitational measurements. Earth, his homeworld, registered at approximately 1.3 times the galactic standard for habitable planets. That meant Jack Brennan had spent his entire evolutionary history on what most civilizations would classify as a high-gravity death trap. "Let us continue," Venmeth said, though his scales had shifted to an alarming shade of green. "Cardiovascular system analysis." The scanner moved lower, revealing Jack's heart and circulatory network. Clara made a sound that I can only describe as a whimper. The human heart was a 4-chambered monstrosity that pumped blood with enough force to supply his entire body, including that enormous brain, with oxygenated blood against the resistance of high-gravity conditions. His blood vessels were reinforced, his capillaries were redundant, and his entire system seemed designed for extreme endurance. "Your heart rate is currently 62 beats per minute," I observed, checking the monitors again. "This is considered your resting state?" "Yeah, pretty normal. Goes up when I exercise, obviously. Gets up to like 180 when I am really pushing it." 180, Clara repeated faintly. "Per minute. Is that bad?" "Most species experience cardiac failure at sustained rates above 90, Venmeth explained, his voice hollow. "You are describing recreational activity." Jack laughed again, that unnervingly cheerful sound. "Oh man, you guys must think humans are crazy. We probably are, to be honest. My buddy Tom used to run marathons, that is like 42 kilometers, for fun. He would come back all sweaty and happy, talking about his runner's high. He ran voluntarily for distances exceeding 40 kilometers? I asked, certain my translator had malfunctioned. Yeah, dude. Humans are persistence hunters. We used to chase animals until they literally collapsed from exhaustion. Then we would just walk up and kill them. Took hours sometimes, but we would just keep going. The room fell silent except for the soft humming of medical equipment. I became acutely aware that I was standing approximately 2 meters from a creature whose ancestors hunted prey to death through sheer relentless endurance. Can we see the rest? Jack asked, gesturing at the hologram. I am kind of curious now. Then Meth, looking as though he might need medical attention himself, continued the scan. Jack's muscular system appeared next, revealing a network of fast twitch and slow twitch fibers that provided both explosive power and sustained stamina. His digestive system could apparently process a wide variety of organic matter, including some substances we classified as mild toxins. His immune system was actively fighting approximately 17 different microbial infections simultaneously, infections he seemed completely unaware of. Jack Brennan, I said slowly, you are currently experiencing multiple bacterial infections, 3 viral contaminants and what appears to be a fungal colonization in your respiratory system. Oh, you mean like a cold? Yeah, I've been fighting something off for a few days. No big deal, it will pass. These infections would require immediate quarantine and aggressive treatment for most species. Really? Huh? I mean, I feel fine. Little congested maybe, he sniffed, demonstrating the congestion. And Kolara actually took 3 steps backward. Your body is fighting these infections while simultaneously healing from impact trauma, operating in an unfamiliar atmospheric composition, and maintaining full consciousness and mobility, Van Myth said, and I detected something in his voice that might have been awe or terror. Possibly both. Yeah, human immune systems are pretty tough, I have heard. We kind of have to be. Earth is full of stuff trying to kill us constantly. Bacteria, viruses, parasites, other humans sometimes. You adapt or you die. You know, I did not know. I could not possibly know. My homeworld was a peaceful paradise compared to the nightmare Jack was describing so casually. There is significant bruising across your torso, I observed, noting the dark purple discoloration visible through the tears in his clothing. Broken ribs, possibly. Internal bleeding likelihood is high. Jack lifted his shirt, revealing the injuries. The bruising was extensive, covering approximately 30% of his chest and abdomen. He pressed his fingers against his ribs, wincing slightly. Yeah, that hurts a bit. Probably cracked a few. They will heal up in a couple weeks though. Ribs always do. A couple of weeks? Kolara's voice had risen to a pitch I had never heard from her before. Rib fractures require surgical intervention and regeneration therapy for most species. Recovery time is measured in months, not weeks. Seriously. Man, you guys are kinda fragile, no offense. No offense, he said, while describing a healing factor that bordered on regeneration. I looked at Dr. Venmeth, who looked at Kolara, who looked at the monitoring equipment as though hoping it would provide some rational explanation for what we were witnessing. It did not. Jack Brennan was by every measurable standard an impossibility wrapped in flesh and bone, held together by sheer stubborn refusal to acknowledge that his biology made no sense, and he wanted breakfast. We had just finished the initial examination and I was beginning to compile my findings into something resembling a coherent medical report when Jack's body began convulsing. It started without warning. One moment he was sitting on the examination platform asking Kolara about what kind of food the station cafeteria served, and the next moment his entire torso jerked violently. His diaphragm contracted with enough force that I heard the sound from across the room, a sharp guttural noise that seemed to originate from deep within his chest cavity. Hick. Then again, hick, and again, hick. Medical emergency, Van Myth shouted, rushing toward the emergency equipment cabinet. He is seizing. Cardiovascular collapse. Prepare emergency intervention. Kolara's appendages moved faster than I had ever seen, pulling out the neural stabilizer and the cardio resuscitation unit. The monitoring equipment screamed warnings, alarms blaring in overlapping frequencies that created a cacophony of impending doom. Jack's body continued its violent spasms, each contraction seeming to rack his entire frame. His face contorted, his eyes squeezed shut, and that horrible sound kept erupting from his throat at irregular intervals. Hic, hiccup. His respiratory system is compromised, I announced, watching the readouts spike and plummet in patterns that indicated total organ failure. Diaphragm spasms detected, neural misfiring. This is catastrophic system breakdown. I had seen death before. Every medical professional has. But watching a patient deteriorate so rapidly, so violently, after seeming perfectly healthy moments earlier, triggered something primal in my psychology. We had failed him. Somehow, despite all our technology and expertise, we had missed something critical. Venmeth grabbed my shoulder, his grip tight with urgency. Dovor, we are losing him. The readings indicate complete systemic failure. I do not think we can save him. Jack's body jerked again, harder this time. His hand moved to his chest, clutching at his sternum. His expression twisted in what I could only interpret as agony. Oh, ancestors, Quillara whispered, her voice breaking. He is dying. We are watching him die. In my 14 cycles at Zenith Station, I had developed protocols for nearly every situation. But standing there, watching this human's life slip away despite every impossible survival trait we had just documented, I felt utterly helpless. The weight of failure pressed down on me like the gravity of his murderous homeworld. And then I did something I had not done since my training days, something we are taught but rarely practice in modern medicine. I began to pray. Spirits of healing, guides of the eternal medical practice, I intoned, placing my primary appendages together in the traditional gesture. Accept this being into your care. May his journey beyond be peaceful. Venmeth joined me immediately, recognizing the ritual. His voice harmonized with mine, adding the Quellan prayer for the dying. May the quantum strings carry his consciousness gently into the next phase of existence. Quillara, tears forming in her optical organs, added her people's death blessing. May the cosmic winds guide him home. May the stars remember his name. We stood there, 3 medical professionals, praying over a patient we had known for less than an hour, mourning the loss of a being whose biology we barely understood. The alarms continued their symphony of tragedy. Jack's body continued its violent convulsion. Heek. Heek. Eka. Okay. Seriously, Jack's voice cut through our prayers, startling all 3 of us so badly that Venmeth actually stumbled backward. Does anyone have water? These hiccups are super annoying. The prayers stopped. The universe seemed to pause. 3 pairs of eyes, representing 3 different species, stared at Jack Brennan with identical expressions of complete and utter confusion. Hiccups? I managed to say, though my translator nearly gave up on processing the emotional content. Yeah, hiccups. You know, when your diaphragm spasms involuntarily. Got them right after the exam. Probably from talking too much on an empty stomach. He demonstrated his body jerking again with that same violent contraction. Hicks. See? Super annoying but totally harmless. Harmless, Quillara repeated, her voice flat with disbelief. We thought you were dying, Venmeth said, and I detected a note of accusation in his tone. Dying? From hiccups? Nah, man. They are just uncomfortable. Usually go away after a few minutes, but water helps sometimes. Or holding your breath. Or getting scared actually, though you guys already tried that one accidentally. He grinned, apparently finding humor in our collective terror. I looked down at my appendages, still positioned in prayer formation. I looked at the emergency equipment Quillara had prepared, unused and unnecessary. I looked at the monitoring displays which were now showing that Jack's readings had returned to his normal impossible baseline. We had performed last rites over hiccups. Jack Brennan, I said, my voice carefully controlled. On your planet, this diaphragm spasm condition is considered. What did you say? Annoying. Yeah, annoying. Sometimes you get them at awkward times like during meetings or on dates. My record is like 2 hours of continuous hiccups. Thought I was going to lose my mind, but eventually they stopped. No permanent damage or anything. 2 hours, Venmeth whispered, his scales now a color I had never seen before, something between horrified purple and existential crisis gray. Do human bodies frequently malfunction in ways that mimic fatal medical emergencies? Quillara asked, and I appreciated that she asked the question I was thinking. Jack considered this, tilting his head. I mean, kind of. We sneeze when our noses are irritated, which looks pretty violent, I guess. We cough when something is in our throat. We yawn when we are tired. Our joints crack and pop randomly. We get muscle spasms called Charlie horses that hurt like hell but are not actually dangerous. Oh, and sometimes our eyes twitch for no reason, which is weird but whatever. Each item on his list was another dagger to my professional confidence. And these are all considered normal? I asked weakly. Totally normal. Just quirks of having a human body. We are kind of a mess, biologically speaking, but we make it work. I became aware that I was still holding my appendages in prayer position. I lowered them slowly, feeling foolish and strangely relieved and also somewhat angry that this human's mere existence was giving me emotional whiplash. I am getting you water, Quillara announced, her voice carrying an edge that suggested she needed a moment to process what had just occurred. Thanks. Also sorry for freaking you guys out. Probably should have warned you that humans do weird stuff sometimes. Then, Meth deactivated the emergency equipment with more force than strictly necessary. I noticed his appendages were trembling slightly. Jack Brennan, I said, I am going to ask you a very important question and I need you to answer honestly. Are there other normal human conditions that might cause us to believe you are experiencing medical emergency? He thought about it, his face scrunching in concentration. Oh, probably tons. Humans are weird, but hey, if something actually serious happens I will let you know. Okay, how will you differentiate between serious conditions and normal human weirdness? Venmouth demanded. Jack shrugged. I will probably say something like ow, that really hurts. Or hey, I think something is actually wrong. You know, communication. What a novel concept in medicine. Clara returned with water, which Jack drank gratefully. His hiccups subsided within 30 seconds and the monitoring equipment confirmed that he was once again in his baseline state of impossible biological stability. I made a note in his medical file. Patient species exhibits numerous normal biological functions that superficially resemble emergency conditions. Recommend updated protocols for human patients. Also recommend sedatives for medical staff. The prayer beads I carried for ceremonial purposes felt heavy in my pocket, mocking me. Jack Brennan smiled, apparently oblivious to the psychological damage he had just inflicted on 3 trained medical professionals. So, about that breakfast, Chief Physician Korath arrived in Medical Bay 3 approximately 47 minutes after the hiccup incident which I had dutifully reported as a false alarm medical emergency. Her expression, framed by the elaborate cranial ridges of her species, suggested she was not pleased with my report. Her 4 eyes blinked in the asynchronous pattern that indicated extreme skepticism. Though Vor, she said, her voice carrying the weight of 23 cycles in medical administration. You filed an emergency death protocol report followed immediately by a complete retraction, citing patient hiccups as the cause of confusion. Explain. I gestured toward Jack, who was currently eating what the cafeteria had identified as a protein supplement bar. He had already consumed 4 of them, claiming he was still hungry. The bars were designed to provide complete nutritional sustenance for an entire day. He treated them like appetizers. Chief Physician, allow me to introduce Jack Brennan. He is human. He is from Earth. And he is, how should I phrase this, biologically unprecedented. Korath's eyes focused on Jack, scanning him with the practiced assessment of someone who had seen virtually every species in the known galaxy. Her expression shifted through several configurations before settling on what I recognized as professional concern mixed with scientific curiosity. Human, she repeated. I am not familiar with this species classification. Where is Earth located? Outer Rim territory apparently uncharted in our databases. Venmouth supplied, pulling up the navigational data. His shuttle's computer contained coordinates that place his homeworld approximately 14,000 light-years from the Galactic Council's established exploration boundary. Uncharted space, Korath murmured. Fascinating. And what makes this human so unprecedented that you felt compelled to summon me from a budgetary meeting, which I should mention I was quite enjoying because it meant approving your equipment requests? Everything, Kolara said simply. Absolutely everything about him defies standard biology. Korath's expression suggested she thought we were exaggerating. That expression would not last long. Very well, she announced, striding forward with the confidence of someone about to prove her subordinates wrong. Let us conduct a proper examination. Jack Brennan, I am Chief Physician Korath. I would like to run some tests to better understand your physiology. Standard procedure for unknown species. Do you consent? Jack swallowed his 5th protein bar and nodded enthusiastically. Sure thing, Doc. What kind of tests are we talking about? Simple evaluations, strength assessment, endurance metrics, sensory perception analysis, pain tolerance indexing, healing factor documentation. Nothing invasive. Sounds good. Let's do it. What followed was approximately 3 hours of progressively more disturbing revelations that I will document here for posterity and possibly as evidence that I have not lost my mental faculty. The strength assessment came first. We brought Jack to the physical therapy wing where we maintained various resistance equipment for rehabilitating patients. The standard test involved lifting a weight calibrated to 50% of species average maximum capacity. For most humanoids in the galactic community, this meant approximately 30 kilograms. Jack approached the barbell, examined it briefly, and lifted it with one hand. Is this it? He asked, raising and lowering it casually. Feels pretty light. You got anything heavier? Karath's eyes widened. She adjusted the weight to 70 kilograms. Jack lifted it with both hands, performing what he called repetitions, raising and lowering the weight 12 times before setting it down. Good warm-up, he commented. What is next? We increased the weight incrementally. At 100 kilograms, Jack showed mild exertion. At 150 kilograms, he strained visibly but completed 6 repetitions. At 200 kilograms, he managed 3 repetitions before stopping, breathing heavily but grinning. Okay, that is a decent workout. I am definitely out of practice. Before the shuttle trip, I could probably have done more. Karath stared at the weight display. 200 kilograms. That was approximately 4 times the maximum lifting capacity of the average Quelon, who were considered among the stronger species in council space. You are out of practice, she said faintly. Yeah, I've been doing mostly cardio lately. Running, swimming, that kind of stuff. Need to get back into the gym. The endurance test was next. We had Jack walk on a moving platform set to moderate speed, equivalent to a brisk walking pace for most species. Standard endurance evaluation involved maintaining this pace for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, Jack was barely breathing hard. Want me to keep going? He asked. Please, Karath said, her voice tight. After 30 minutes, Jack requested we increase the speed. After 45 minutes, he was jogging, his breathing elevated but controlled. After 60 minutes, Karath stopped the test, not because Jack showed signs of fatigue, but because she needed to sit down. On Earth, Jack explained, still barely winded. People run marathons, like I mentioned before. That is 42 kilometers. The record time is just over 2 hours. I am not that fast, but I could probably do a marathon in like 4 hours if I trained for it. 4 hours of continuous running. Then Meth said, his voice hollow. Covering 42 kilometers. Yeah, it is pretty brutal, but people do it all the time. Thousands of people participate in marathon events. It is like a fun challenge. Fun challenge. Those words would echo in my mind for days. The sensory tests revealed that Jack could see in a broader light spectrum than 70% of known species, hear frequencies that our equipment barely registered, and possessed a sense of smell that, while not as acute as some specialist species, was remarkably sophisticated for a generalist omnivore. He could also sense temperature variations with startling accuracy, describing the room as slightly cool at 22 degrees Celsius, which most species found perfectly comfortable. Then came the pain tolerance assessment, which I had been dreading. Jack, Karath said carefully, I am going to apply gradually increasing pressure to your arm using this calibrated device. Please inform me when the sensation becomes painful. Okay. Sure. She activated the device. It began applying pressure. The readout climbed. 10 units, 20 units, 30 units. At 40 units, most species would be experiencing significant discomfort. At 50 units, pain receptors would be screaming. Jack watched the readout with mild interest. Feels like pressure, he commented. At 60 units. Kind of like a firm grip. 70 units. 80 units. 90 units. Starting to hurt a little, he said. At 100 units. Like a strong pinch. Karath increased to 120 units. Jack winced. Okay, yeah, that hurts. Not terrible, but definitely painful. She deactivated the device. Her hands were shaking slightly. Jack Brennan, she said slowly, the pain threshold you just demonstrated is approximately 3 times higher than the galactic average. The pressure at 120 units would cause most species to lose consciousness from shock. Really? I mean, humans deal with pain pretty regularly. You stub your toe, you get a headache. You work out too hard and get sore. You just kind of push through it. You know, push through it, Karath repeated mechanically. We tested his healing factor by taking a small tissue sample, a standard biopsy procedure that involved a minor incision. Within 20 minutes of applying the sample collection device, the wound had visibly begun closing. Within 2 hours, only a faint red line remained. Within 4 hours, even that had faded. Oh yeah, humans heal pretty fast from small stuff, Jack explained. Cuts, scrapes, bruises. Takes longer for big injuries, obviously, but our bodies are pretty good at repair work. Evolution, you know? If you did not heal fast on Earth, you probably did not survive long enough to reproduce. Karath had stopped taking notes. She simply stood there, her multiple eyes fixed on Jack with an expression I had never seen on her face before. It was the look of someone whose understanding of biology had been fundamentally challenged and found wanting. Jack Brennan, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Your species is terrifying. Jack laughed. That same cheerful sound that seemed so at odds with the existential horror he was inflicting on us. Terrifying? Nah, we are pretty normal. You should meet some of the actually tough humans. Athletes, soldiers, endurance specialists. Those people are on another level. I am just a regular guy who worked in cargo logistics. Regular guy. Cargo logistics. He had just demonstrated physical capabilities that would qualify him as a super soldier on most civilized worlds, and he considered himself average. Korath turned to me and I saw something in her expression that I had never expected to see from the chief physician. Fear. Thulvor, she said quietly. I need you to research everything you can about Earth. I need to know what kind of planet produces beings like this. I need to understand what we are dealing with. Yes, Chief Physician. Jack, oblivious to the existential crisis he had triggered in an entire medical staff, stretched his arms above his head. His joints popped audibly. So, can I get some real food now? Those protein bars were okay, but I am craving something more substantial. Maybe some meat. You guys have meat here. We did have meat, but suddenly, watching this predator from an uncharted Deathworld casually request flesh for consumption, I wondered if letting him eat in the cafeteria was a wise idea. I retreated to my office after ensuring Jack was escorted to the cafeteria under Quilara's supervision, though I suspected if any escorting needed to happen, Jack would be the one doing it. My terminal glowed softly in the dimmed lighting as I began my research, accessing the coordinates from Jack's shuttle computer and cross-referencing them with every astronomical database available to Zenith Station. Earth. Sol system. Third planet from a G-type main sequence star. The initial data seemed unremarkable. Standard planetary classification. Single moon. Rotation period of approximately 24 standard hours. Orbital period of 365 days. Everything appeared normal, which should have been my first indication that nothing was normal at all. I dug deeper, accessing the environmental data that Jack's shuttle computer had helpfully logged in its navigation systems. Gravity. 9.8 meters per second squared. I had to recalculate 3 times because surely the reading was incorrect. 9.8. That was 1.3 times standard galactic baseline. Humans had evolved under gravitational stress that most species would require exoskeleton support to withstand for extended periods. Every step Jack took, every movement he made was casual defiance of physics that would exhaust most species within hours. Atmospheric composition. 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. I felt my respiratory system constrict. 21% oxygen. Most civilized worlds maintained oxygen levels between 12 and 15%. Earth's atmosphere was hyperoxygenated, a composition that would cause oxygen toxicity in most species within days. Humans breathed what we would classify as a volatile accelerant with every breath and considered it normal. Surface temperature range, -89 degrees Celsius to 58 degrees Celsius. The numbers blurred on my screen. I reread them 4 times. Earth experienced temperature swings of 147 degrees. My homeworld's temperature varied by perhaps 20 degrees seasonally, and we considered that dramatic. Earth was a planet of extremes that would kill most galactic species through environmental exposure alone. But I was only beginning to understand the horror. I accessed the biological database next, searching for information about Earth's ecosystem. What I found made the previous discoveries seem quaint by comparison. Earth was classified according to the Objective Environmental Danger Assessment Protocols as a Class 12 Deathworld. Class 12. There were only 15 classification levels. Earth was in the top 20% of most lethal planets capable of supporting complex life. The report detailed a planet where nearly everything was actively trying to kill you. Predators that ranged from microscopic organisms to multi-ton apex hunters. Weather patterns that included supercell thunderstorms capable of producing electrical discharges with billions of volts. Rotating air columns called tornadoes with wind speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. Tropical cyclones that devastated entire regions. Seismic activity that could level cities, volcanic eruptions that altered global climates. Earth had a continent where almost 70% of the wildlife possessed venom capable of killing humans. Humans lived there anyway. They called it Australia, and considered it a nice place for holidays. The planet's oceans contained predators with teeth designed to tear flesh, electrical organs that could stun prey, and creatures with tentacles covered in neurotoxins. Humans swam in these oceans recreationally. For fun, the megafauna list read like a catalog of nightmares. Creatures called hippopotamuses that could bite a human in half. Elephants massing 6,000 kilograms with tusks designed for goring. Bears that stood 3 meters tall and possessed claws longer than my primary appendages. Big cats that could run at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour and possessed bite forces that could crush bone. And humans, persistent predators with relatively modest natural weapons, had somehow become the dominant species. They had outcompeted everything on that murderous planet through sheer bloody-minded refusal to die. I found myself reading about human diseases next, unable to stop the flow of horrifying information. Earth was home to countless pathogens, bacteria, viruses, parasites, fungi, prions. The human immune system had evolved into a warfare state, constantly battling invisible enemies that would overwhelm most species within days. That fungal infection in Jack's respiratory system that he had dismissed as a cold, it would have hospitalized a Quellan for weeks. Humans could contract something called influenza, suffer through fever and body-wide pain, and return to work within days. They could be infected with bacteria that caused their digestive systems to violently expel contents from both ends simultaneously, an experience they called food poisoning, and they would joke about it afterward. My screen displayed an image of Earth from space. It looked beautiful. Blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown continents. It looked peaceful. It was a lie. Earth was a crucible, a forge where life was hammered into impossible resilience or extinguished completely. And humans had not just survived there. They had thrived. They had built civilizations. They had developed art and music and philosophy while simultaneously fighting off predators and diseases and environmental catastrophes that would have driven any sane species to extinction. I understood now why Jack could lift 200 kilograms casually, why he could run for hours without stopping, why pain that would incapacitate most species was something he pushed through, why his body healed at impossible speeds, why his biology made no sense according to our medical understanding. He was not built for our civilized galaxy of temperature-controlled stations and peaceful planets. He was built for Earth, where weakness meant death and strength meant maybe, possibly, if you were very lucky, you might survive another day. The office door chimed. Benmeth entered, his scales pale. Belvoir, I have been reviewing the data you forwarded. Tell me I am misreading the classifications. Tell me Earth is not actually ranked as a Class 12 death world. You are not misreading anything. By the ancestors. He collapsed into a chair. We have been treating him like a standard patient. We gave him a routine examination. We made him lift weights. He thought the weights were a warm-up, I said numbly. What have we done? Venmeth's voice carried a note of hysteria. What if he had become angry? What if our medical procedures had been painful enough to trigger an aggressive response? Belvoir, we were in a room with an apex predator from a death world, and we were poking him with instruments. I had not considered that perspective. The realization hit me like physical impact. Jack had been patient with us, cooperative, friendly even. But what if he had not been? What if those pain tolerance tests had genuinely hurt him, and he had decided to defend himself? His species had outcompeted bears and big cats and creatures that could kill with venom or electricity or sheer crushing force. What would we have done if Jack Brennan had decided we were threats? He called himself a regular guy, I whispered. He works in cargo logistics. He is average for his species. Average, Venmeth repeated. Velvar. If he is average, what are the exceptional humans like? I did not want to know. I genuinely did not want to know. My terminal chimed with an incoming message from Kulara. The text was short and concerning. Jack has finished eating. He consumed enough food for 6 people. He asked if we have seconds. He is still hungry. What do I do? I looked at Venmeth. He looked at me. We both looked at the terminal displaying Earth's classification as a Class 12 death world, where food scarcity had been a constant evolutionary pressure, where humans had developed the ability to consume massive amounts when available and store it as energy reserves for leaner times. Feed him, I typed back. Feed him whatever he wants. Do not let the human go hungry, because the very last thing we needed, was to see what a hungry predator from Earth was capable of doing. Korath's voice came through my communicator, urgent and strained. Vilvor, report to my office immediately. We need to discuss protocols for human patients. We need to discuss whether we are even equipped to treat his species. We need to discuss what it means that humans are apparently venturing into galactic space. I stood slowly, my limbs feeling weak. Venmeth followed, his scales still pale with shock. We had learned about human biology today. We had learned about Earth's environment. We had learned that the galaxy was larger and more terrifying than we had ever imagined. And somewhere in our cafeteria, Jack Brennan was eating his 4th meal, completely unaware that he had shattered everything we thought we knew about the limits of biological possibility. 3 days later I stood in Medical Bay 3 holding Jack Brennan's discharge papers with hands that trembled slightly despite my best efforts at professional composure. The documents felt heavier than they should, weighted with implications I was still processing. Chief Physician Korath had insisted on a full medical evaluation before releasing him, which had resulted in 72 hours of increasingly disturbing observations. Jack had eaten approximately 18 meals, each sized for multiple people, and claimed he was finally feeling satisfied. He had slept for 8 hours straight without moving, a state we initially mistook for coma until he woke up refreshed and asked about breakfast. His various minor injuries had healed at rates that defied every medical model we possessed, and now, we were releasing him back into the galaxy. "So I am good to go?" Jack asked, signing the discharge forms on the datapad with casual efficiency. "Clean bill of health, medically speaking, yes," I said carefully. "Though I am not entirely certain what constitutes a clean bill of health for your species. You have recovered from injuries that would have required months of treatment for most patients. Your biological functions remain as they have been since arrival, completely impossible by our standards yet apparently normal for you." Cool, thanks for taking care of me, Doc. You guys did great work. We had performed minimal intervention beyond observation and feeding him enough food to sustain a small colony, but Jack's smile was genuine, his gratitude sincere, and I found myself appreciating the sentiment even as I mentally calculated how much danger he might pose to other station residents during his departure. "Jack Brennan," Korath said, entering the bay with Venmeth and Kolara following close behind. "Before you leave, we have prepared something for you." She held out a small data chip, her expression formal. "This contains comprehensive information about human biology as we understand it, based on our observations and your shuttle's database. We have also included a medical alert file that can be shared with other stations you may visit. It explains in diplomatic terms that human physiology differs significantly from standard galactic norms."
"Oh, that is thoughtful. Thanks."
Jack took the chip, examining it briefly before pocketing it. "Will other stations need this? I mean, I am probably heading back to Earth once I get my shuttle repaired. Not sure how many other humans are out here exploring." The 4 of us exchanged glances. The possibility of more humans entering galactic space was something we had discussed extensively over the past 3 days, usually in hushed tones that suggested existential dread. "If other humans do venture into explored space," Korath said diplomatically, "it would be beneficial for medical facilities to have advanced knowledge of your species' unique characteristics, to prevent, shall we say, unnecessary panic." "Unnecessary panic? Wait, did I freak you guys out that badly?" "You died from hiccups," Kolara said flatly. "Or so we believed. We performed last rites, over hiccups." Jack's laughter filled the medical bay, loud and unrestrained. "Oh man, I am sorry about that. That must have been so confusing. Yeah, humans probably seem pretty weird to you guys. We are weird to ourselves sometimes, to be honest." "Weird is an insufficient descriptor," Venmith muttered. "Terrifying, impossible, illogically nonsensical. These are more accurate terms." "Jack," I said, feeling compelled to offer some final guidance, "please understand that most species in the galaxy are considerably more fragile than humans. Your casual physical contact, what you consider friendly gestures, could cause injury. Your standard exertion levels would exhaust most beings. Your dietary requirements would bankrupt smaller stations. Please exercise caution in your interactions." His expression sobered slightly. "Yeah. Okay. I will be careful. Did not realize how different we were until coming here. Kind of makes you think, you know? We take for granted how tough Earth made us." "Tough." The understatement was almost charming. "Here," Kolara said, offering Jack a container. "Protein supplements. Enough for approximately 10 days if rationed properly. For human metabolic rates," Korath added quickly. "Approximately 3 days." Jack accepted the container gratefully. "You guys are the best. Seriously. I know I was probably a difficult patient, but you took good care of me. If you are ever near Earth, look me up. I will buy you dinner. Well, I will buy you dinner, and approximately 6 dinners for myself apparently." We walked him to the station's departure bay, maintaining what I hoped was a respectful distance. Other station residents noticed our procession, and I saw several species quickly move out of Jack's path. Word had spread, as it always did on stations like Zenith. The human from the Deathworld, the impossible patient, the being who treated mortal injuries like minor inconveniences. At the departure gate, Jack turned back, offering his hand in the human gesture of farewell. I had researched this custom, a handshake, a display of trust, showing weaponless palms, a tradition dating back to their violent evolutionary history. I extended my primary appendage carefully. His grip was firm but controlled, and I realized with some surprise that he was being gentle with us. He had modulated his strength, aware now of how fragile we must seem to him. Thanks again, Doc. Take care. Safe travels, Jack Brennan. Please try not to terrify any other medical professionals. He grinned. No promise, and then he was gone, walking down the corridor with that casual confidence that came from being an apex predator who did not realize other species saw him as a walking catastrophe. I returned to my office and began composing my incident report. The document grew longer as I typed, detailing every observation, every test result, every moment of confused terror we had experienced. I concluded with a series of recommendations that I suspected would become station policy within days. Recommendation 1. Establish specialized medical protocols for human patients, including revised definitions of normal vital signs, expanded pain tolerance scales, and emergency response guidelines that account for non-emergency human biological functions. Recommendation 2. Create a dedicated medical wing for Deathworld species, staffed by personnel trained to manage patients whose biology defies standard medical understanding. Recommendation 3. Implement station-wide educational programs about human capabilities to prevent panic when humans exhibit normal behaviors that appear catastrophic to other species. Recommendation 4. Increase cafeteria food production capacity by 300% in anticipation of future human visitors. Recommendation 5. Update all medical staff psychological support services to include counseling for professionals whose understanding of biology has been fundamentally challenged by patient encounters. I leaned back in my chair reviewing the document. It read like science fiction. But then again, Jack Brennan had seemed like science fiction right up until he walked out of our medical bay whistling a cheerful tune from his Deathworld home. My communicator chimed. Clara's message was brief. I am taking 3 days personal leave to process what we just experienced. I recommend you do the same. Wise advice. I approved her leave request and submitted one for myself. Somewhere in the galaxy, Jack Brennan was continuing his journey, completely unaware that he had become a legend at Zenith Station, the human who survived hiccups, the patient from Earth, the being who had casually demonstrated that everything we knew about biological limits was adorably naive. I saved the incident report and attached a final note for Chief Physician Korath. If humans become common in galactic space, we are going to need a bigger hospital, and significantly more food, and possibly therapy. Lots of therapy. My terminal displayed Jack's departure clearance confirmation. He was gone, but the impact of his 3-day stay would echo through Zenith Station's medical community for years to come. Humans were normal, Jack had insisted. Regular, average, just another species trying to make their way in the universe. And if that was true, if Jack Brennan represented the average of his kind, then the galaxy had no idea what was coming. I closed my terminal and headed home, wondering if perhaps I should consider a career change, something less stressful, like diffusing antimatter cores, or negotiating peace treaties with hostile species. Anything, really, except treating patients from Class 12 Deathworlds who considered catastrophic injuries to be minor inconveniences and hiccups to be merely annoying. My appendages were still trembling slightly. I suspected they would be for quite some time.